Welcome and thanks for joining us on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community. And today we're here to talk with James Tipton about a Gears of Government award that he was recently named, presidential level award I might add, that he was named for based on his innovative approach to the B-1 bomber modernization and sustainment activities. But before we get into that, Mr. Tipton, if you could just take a minute, introduce yourself to our audience and give us a little on your background in government service.
Sure. My name is James Tipton. I've been in federal service now for about 17 years. Started off working for Defense Contract Management Agency. Got a lot of experience working with different acquisition programs at the ACAT I level and exposure to how all the different services do acquisition, as well as, the rules and laws that govern acquisition in the federal government. From then, worked for the Navy for a little over 10 years on the E6 Airborne Strategic Command Post. Got a lot of maintenance experience, a lot of hands-on experience. Got the privilege of working with a lot of our young sailors in the service, and then got the opportunity to come into a program office for AFLCMC and work on the B-1 bomber as a avionics and software technical expert.
So tell us, how did you find out about this Gears of Government award?
So I found out about this award when my chief engineer had nominated me for the award, and I actually managed to succeed at the first level and then subsequent levels as it went on up through the chain.
Let's talk a little bit about the B-1 then, since that's the platform that has gotten you into this position. It entered the Air Force life in the mid-'80s as a nuclear bomber, but has since been converted to a conventional mission. Plays a huge role in our day-to-day operations now, in the contingency operations that we've been having going on for the past decade or so. So basically, what is your job in keeping that aircraft in the air and operational?
So airplanes of all varieties today rely on tremendous amounts of software. Some people may think of it as one or two computers that run the whole airplane, but really it's dozens, if not more, computers in each and every box that talk to each other, integrate, and provide a wealth of information and control to the flight crew. So my realm of responsibility is to ensure that for the changes requested by our users, for new capabilities that are requested, we decide how that's going to be implemented and then decide on a hardware and software solution that can provide that capability to the user or that improvement or that fix, and then get that implemented, verify that it's effective, verify that it's safe, and field that particular change.
So, we know that the B-1 is really not performing today the mission that it was originally designed to do. How has that kind of complicated the efforts to modernize and sustain it, since it's doing something a little bit unique?
So I would say that all aircraft are inherently a little bit flexible in what they can do within their design parameters. It is true that originally it was conceived as a low-level penetrating bomber, and some of the missions today are a little bit different from that original concept. However, the payload, the speed, and the control mechanisms of the B-1 still give it a lot of unique capabilities that we can bring to the table that some other aircraft maybe can't. And so we bring in new capabilities, new equipment, new software to then further, provide flexibility and options to the user within their new capabilities requests and their new mission profiles.
It seems nowadays that when you go out and buy a cell phone that you can have it for about 2 years and then it's pretty much obsolete. You're dealing with an aircraft that was built in the 80s and with technology that's even a little bit older than that. So how do you go about updating software on something, or does that sometimes mean that you need to upgrade the hardware as well, or how exactly does that complicate situation?
It can provide a lot of complication, even in so much as that some of the software that some of this equipment runs on hasn't been taught in school in decades. So, even finding people sometimes with the right skill set to make changes to or provide new bits of code on some of that software can even be a real challenge. And yes, very often we will find ourselves having to change hardware as well, which is an expensive proposition. So providing new software that can enhance our flexibility and capability is always a preferable answer, if at all possible. Um, Changing out the hardware provides a lot of new challenges and requirements that end up increasing cost quite a bit beyond just a possible software only change.
So, at AFLCMC, we talk about that we deliver what the warfighter needs when the warfighter needs it. And I've read recently, General Ray, the commander of Global Strike Command, has been pleased with the improved reliability of the B-1 and how it's more available for them to use when planning missions. So talk to us about your focus on, one, introducing new capabilities that the platform didn't originally have, but also sustaining it so that it's available when they need it.
So one of the challenges that we face right now is continuing battles for funding, particularly as you see at a larger level, the federal government trying to reduce the amount of spending in general, and then particularly on the Department of Defense. So bringing new capability versus fixes versus sustaining, the old capability is always a battle. And sometimes it can be very difficult to make a case for fixes and enhancements versus new capabilities, and it's always a delicate balance. The push and transition to more agile and more frequent software developments, in my mind, bring me hope that we can start to incorporate some of those smaller, less critical fixes that maybe our users have wanted for some time. They just never quite make it to the top of the priority list when allocating the amount of funding that you have available.
Now, I've seen that the Gears of Government Award that you received is really tied to innovations. So, explain a little bit about some of the innovations that you've worked on recently that helped garner this award.
Sure. So traditionally, software development and really acquisition as a whole has been done in what they call a waterfall model, where you start with defining everything that you want the system to be and do. And then you work through a design process where slowly you build out sub-requirements, slowly you build out how it's going to be able to do those things. And then you enter a phase of building. And then at the end, you end up with a product that you then go spend some amount of time testing and receive. So the transition we are going through now is a more cyclical and iterative approach where you have a team that is constantly doing the development part of it, and they're pulling from a bucket of requirements all the time. And then every so often you take what they have built and give it to your testers, but at the same time that development team is still developing the next iteration right at the same time. You haven't stopped and said we're complete and we wait for the new requirement. And then those testers, right, they take that product, they continue testing it, and then find any deficiencies in it, put those back in the requirements buckets. And if there's no, safety issue, there's no glaring problem with that software product, you go ahead and release that to your users. But at the same time, your developers are still working on the next iteration. You never stop. And that gives us a lot more flexibility in bringing new requirements in, bringing new capabilities. Whereas before, since it wasn't defined at the very beginning, it's extremely disruptive and challenging to try to work a change or a new requirement in. And in conjunction with that, during the waterfall model, you take a lot of contractual deliverables throughout the development, whereas the new cyclical iterative approach, right, you're still developing those products, but you only take them when you're going to release that software. So you're not getting quite as frequent deliveries that you have to pay for all the time.
Mhm. So is this more like, I keep going back to cell phones, but you know, on your cell phone, the iOS is constantly updating, and so sometimes there'll be like small little changes that push out and that just to fix like simple bugs or something like that, or apps the same way. Is it more like that then?
That's the idea, is that each change that you push out is smaller, and so you can do it more frequently. Traditionally, you know, the government contracting timeline, the development timeline, the testing timeline are all very, very long. So when you can bucket the sets of changes you're doing much smaller and you keep that development pipeline going, then you don't have to, you know, go through that big set of time intervals to do each block every time you want to release a change. You're just continually developing, and then you can release those buckets of changes that are smaller, but you release them much more frequently.
Okay. And so is this a development that you've made then on B-1?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how, give us an example of how something like that has worked.
Okay, so we get a lot of requirements from our users for new capabilities, and there is, you know, official requests for capabilities like urgent operational needs, things like that. Those can be very disruptive because they have a time frame of we want this by, and generally those time frames are short in terms of government contracting and acquisition. So by having this system and development ongoing, you can prioritize that to the top of your list, and, you know, get that capability out well within the time frame that's been requested, instead of starting at the beginning and looking at, you know, maybe a minimum of 2 years, 3 years, something like that to get it out. It also gives you the flexibility of, if you find a deficiency in your test program, for instance, it doesn't require, you know, major contractual changes and rework to get back into development to fix that. There's already a system set up to, you know, work those requirements into your next release.
And so it sounds like it's just a matter of getting the capability that the warfighter needs in their hands quicker.
Yes, sir. That's the #1 goal.
Okay. So that pretty much brings us to the end of our time. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention, something that we've forgotten, or maybe some people that you'd like to include?
Sure. So, you know, I was very fortunate to be nominated for this award, but there is nothing that I do that can't be attributed to the team that I work with. There are professionals all the way from our users to my peers that I work with, engineers, the contractors that I work with. Everybody every day is always pushing to support that end user and get them something that they need, they want, and that's going to keep them effective and safe.
Well, sir, we appreciate your time today. And again, congratulations on being named to this presidential level award. That's a really awesome achievement. And thanks for helping us understand a little bit more about how the B-1 keeps up in the air.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.